Hello everyone, today I'll continue sharing with you the love story of the poor girl Diep and CEO James. I hope you enjoy the video. In Phnom Penh, James felt as if he had been swept into a colossal machine called work. From early morning, he found himself in opulent conference rooms with towering ceilings, glittering crystal chandeliers, and the low, steady hum of air conditioners drowning out conversations. At noon, he sat in five-star restaurants, eating lavish meals he barely tasted, his mind still consumed with every clause of the contracts. In the evening, time that should have been for sleep or a call home, he was drawn into endless networking parties with all kinds of people, from financiers and real estate tycoons to politicians. The man James needed to reach was Mr. Sok, the head of one of Cambodia's most powerful financial conglomerates, and the sole gate that could help his company survive the crisis. But Mr. Sok never discussed serious matters in a meeting room. For him, everything began with relationships, and to build one, James had to be present at every gathering Mr. Sok arranged, whether related to business or not. At almost all of these events, Lena, Mr. Sok's only daughter, was there. Whenever she entered a space, it was as if she brought her own light, a thin silk dress hugging her curves, a slight curve of a smile at her lips, and eyes that lingered on a man just longer than necessary. From the very first meeting, Lena had shown a clear interest in James, openly, without pretense. At first, James kept his distance. He answered politely when spoken to, careful not to get drawn into ambiguous situations. But Lena deliberately closed that distance. She would find a seat next to him at dinner, pour him wine with a knowing smile, and even use the excuse of helping with translation to review a contract together in a private room. On evenings when James intended to video call Diep, his phone would instead buzz with a message from Mr. Sok's assistant. Tonight Mr. Sok is hosting a dinner at the Raffles Hotel. Please be there by 7. And of course, Lena would be present. She often appeared under the warm, dim glow of the VIP room lights, the faint trace of her perfume seeping into every sense. Slow jazz drifted through the air, glasses clinked, and bursts of laughter threaded between conversations in both Khmer and English. In that atmosphere, James's phone stayed in his pocket, buzzing softly whenever Diep sent a message. He would glance at the screen and see her name, but felt every gaze in the room, especially Lena's, fixed intently on him. One evening, after enduring hours of small talk, James stepped into the hotel corridor for air. The night breeze carried the scent of frangipani from the garden below. The faint click of high heels sounded behind him, and then Lena appeared, a glass of red wine in hand. You know, she tilted her head, her gaze like a challenge, my father thinks very highly of you. And, so do I. James frowned slightly, stepping back to maintain distance. Thank you, but Lena smiled, cutting him off. If you really want this project to succeed, let me help. And to let me help, you need to be closer to me. Her words wrapped around James's throat like an invisible cord. He knew he was trapped. Refusing could mean losing the contract, but accepting would mean betraying Diep. That night, in his hotel room overlooking the tunnel sap, James sat silently by the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered on the river's surface. Inside, only the steady hum of the air conditioner filled the room. On the table, his phone lit up. Are you asleep? I miss you. A message from Diep. He picked it up, his finger brushing lightly across the screen, ready to call, but then set it down again. A heavy sigh slipped from his lips, as if the entire city had fallen silent with him. In the first weeks after James arrived in Cambodia, Diep's phone still rang faithfully every night. Despite the time difference, despite the mountain of work piling up on his desk, James still made time to call, telling her about tense meetings in brightly lit glass-walled rooms, rushed meals grabbed between breaks, and moments when he stood alone on his hotel balcony, gazing out at an unfamiliar city while aching for their home in Vietnam. His voice then was still warm, his gaze lingering on her face through the video call, as if to make up for the hundreds of kilometers between them. But then, those calls began to grow less frequent, like a fire dimming under a strange wind. At first, it was just a few messages arriving later than usual, sometimes with an apology, meetings ran late, just finished. Then came the times he said he was busy, promised to call later, but stayed silent all night. Whenever Diep texted to ask, his replies were brief. "I'm handling something, don't worry." Still, she could sense the change. His voice no longer carried the same vitality, and at times his eyes looked tired and distant on the screen, no longer holding her gaze as before. Evenings spent waiting for his call became a tormenting routine. Diep sat alone in the dimly lit room, only a small desk lamp casting pale yellow light over her hands clutching the phone. The silent screen reflected her face, trying to force a smile to reassure herself. She told herself, "He's just busy, this is only a rough patch. Once it's over, things will go back to the way they were." But deep down, in a shadowed corner of her heart, a quiet unease smoldered, like the smell of smoke in a closed room. No flames in sight, but you know it's burning somewhere. Once, when James did call, his voice was drowned out by lively music and bursts of laughter in the background. He said he was at a client meeting, but Diep caught the clear, bright laughter of a woman among the noise. Her grip tightened on the phone, swallowing back the questions stuck in her throat. In the end, she only gave a faint smile and asked casually, afraid the answer might wound them both. That night, Diep sat by the window, the streets below already quiet except for a few dim street lights. She remembered the days when he was still in Vietnam, how just hearing his footsteps in the alley could warm her heart. Now, between them lay the distance of an entire country, and each passing day felt like a thin thread stretching taut, ready to snap at any moment. In her mind, the same question echoed again and again, like a soft knock inside her thoughts. Would James still keep his promise to come back to her, or was he slowly drifting toward a place she could never reach? In Phnom Penh, James lived in a relentless cycle that seemed to have no pause. Each day began at 6 a.m. with a packed schedule of meetings, first at corporate headquarters, then in grand hotels hosting closed-door conferences. The air was always thick with the scent of roasted coffee and expensive cigars, the murmur of conversations blending with the constant clatter of laptop keys. He had to seize every opportunity to find a way to save his company, and that path led directly to Mr. Sock, the head of a massive financial conglomerate whose power stretched across banking, real estate, and energy. The problem was, Mr. Sock rarely discussed business across a boardroom table. Every major decision was weighed through social gatherings, where a glass of wine and small talk mattered more than the contract itself. And almost without fail, Lena, his only daughter, was there. Lena was unlike any woman James had ever met. She was young, bold, and so confident that her gaze alone could make a person forget what they were about to say. From their very first meeting, she showed an interest in James, asking about his life in Vietnam, his personal tastes, even remembering small details like his preferred wine. At first, James responded politely, keeping a careful distance. But Lena never let that distance last long. She would choose the seat beside him at dinners, pour his wine with a hint of a smile. Once, she used the excuse of helping translate a few Khmer documents to invite him into a private room. Under the warm golden light, her face seemed too close, the air too hazy, forcing James to stand near the door to keep his boundaries. On nights when James planned to call Diep, another message would cut in, 7 p.m., Rosewood Hotel, informal dinner with Mr. Sock. And he knew Lena would be there. In the luxurious dining room, soft jazz mingled with the clink of crystal glasses, and her perfume brushed past him whenever she leaned in to speak. He glanced at his phone and saw a message from Diep, "What are you doing?" But with so many eyes on him, and Lena's gaze fixed, he left the message unread and slipped the phone back into his pocket. One evening, after enduring hours of networking, James stepped out onto the hotel balcony for air. Below, the tunnel sap shimmered with city lights. The faint sound of heels approached, and then Lena appeared, holding a glass of red wine. "You know," she smiled, her eyes never leaving his, "my father thinks very highly of you." "And, so do I." James tightened his grip on his glass. "Thank you, but Lena cut him off, "If you want this project to succeed, let me help. And to let me help, you need to be closer to me." Her words dropped into a heavy silence. James understood he was being drawn into a game where the line between business and emotion was dangerously blurred. But he also knew that if he stepped back now, all his efforts to save the company could vanish into thin air. That night, back in his room, James sat by the window, watching the traffic along the riverbank. His phone lit up. "Are you asleep?" "I miss you." From Diep. He picked it up, then set it down again. A slow sigh slipped out, dissolving into the Phnom Penh night. Diep still lived in the small house they once shared, everything seemingly untouched. The dark wooden cabinet James had once modified with extra shelves, the thin curtain swaying gently with every breeze, the glass vase on the dining table that she still refilled with fresh water each morning. Only now, it was missing his familiar presence and voice. Every morning, as she stepped into the yard to water the potted flowers, Diep would instinctively glance toward the alley, as if waiting to hear the sound of his motorbike stopping at the gate, his footsteps crossing the yard, and his gentle call, "I'm home." But all that came was silence, so long and deep that she could hear the wind slipping through the trees and the soft thud of fallen leaves hitting the cement. Her longing for James was not just in her thoughts, it seeped into every small detail of daily life. The morning coffee they used to sip together was now just her alone at the table, tasting each bitter mouthful. The empty chair across from her felt like a heavy, invisible gap, a constant reminder that the distance between them was measured not only in kilometers, but in long, unbroken days of silence. The more she missed him, the more fragile she felt. Whenever her mind wandered, images of James in Cambodia returned, him in a suit, his gentle smile, his warm hands, and the questions she dared not seek answers to: what was he doing? Did he miss her? Had he ever thought of calling her amid the rush of his work? She feared those thoughts, so she forced herself to stay busy. By day, Diep took on extra shifts at the store, rearranging every item on the shelves, wiping away the dust, doing even the chores James used to help with. At night, she took online orders, staying up late to pack goods, print invoices, tie strings, and seal boxes. Every so often, as she bent down to tape up a package, a memory of James would flood in, his quiet smile when he'd say, "Let me do it," his careful hands arranging each item, the way he'd gently shake the box to make sure nothing shifted inside. Diep would press her lips together, give a sharp shake of her head as if to fling those memories away, and go back to work. She believed that if she stayed busy enough, her heart might feel a little less empty. But when night came and the work was done, the house would sink into stillness. Only the ticking of the wall clock and the chirring of insects in the garden remained. Diep sat at the table, the silent phone lying in front of her. Its dark screen reflected her face, a face trying to appear calm, but with eyes that still held a deep, quiet sadness. She wondered if, somewhere far away, James was thinking of her the way she thought of him, or if he had drifted into another world, where their calls and messages were slowly becoming scattered fragments, swept away by time and distance. James's days were filled not only with work, but with Lena's constant presence. It seemed that wherever he went, whether in a meeting room, a partner's cafe, or an evening banquet, Lena was there too. She never appeared by chance, each arrival was a subtle arrangement, enough for James to understand this was no coincidence. In the morning, when James arrived at SOC Group's headquarters to wait for a meeting, Lena would appear with 2 cups of hot coffee. "I know you like an Americano with no sugar," she said with a smile, placing the cup on his table. James thanked her, keeping a polite tone, but her eyes never left him for a second. At noon, just as James was about to have a quick lunch with a few Vietnamese colleagues, Lena would drop by, claiming she was just nearby and inviting him out. She always chose upscale restaurants, ordering signature Khmer dishes she insisted he had to try, and never forgot to snap a few selfies, adding a deliberately vague remark, "For memories, for later." In the evening, hardly a night passed in peace. Either Mr. Sock would invite him to a party, with Lena of course accompanying, or she would send him a message, "I want to show you a beautiful place, come out for a bit." If James refused, the next day she would show up looking slightly displeased, only to erase the distance with a disarming smile. Once, at a lavish hotel party, Lena skillfully led James out to the balcony, where the city lights stretched below them like a golden ribbon. "You know," she said softly, eyes locked on his, "here, I haven't found anyone I want to get close to, except you." James frowned slightly, intending to head back inside, but Lena stepped forward, close enough for him to catch the scent of her perfume. With each passing day, James felt Lena's circle tightening around him. He knew that if he let things go too far, he stood to lose far more than he could gain, but he also understood that resisting her could mean shattering all his efforts to negotiate with Mr. Sock. That evening, after politely turning down Lena's invitation to see the city at night, James strode quickly out of the hotel lobby, wanting nothing more than to escape the golden lights and hollow laughter. Back in his room, the door shut with a dry click, sealing him off from the bustle outside. He sank into the sofa by the window, loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and felt the fatigue seep deep into his muscles. All day, he had been forcing himself to smile, to speak in a gentle tone, to keep his gaze courteous at every gesture from Lena. It was all part of a social performance he had no choice but to play, for the company, for the dozens of employees back home waiting on their paychecks. Outside, Phnom Penh still gleamed. Streetlights along the tunnel sap spilled golden streaks across the rippling water. The sound of car horns drifted from afar, blending with the bass thump of music from a nearby bar, strange and cold to him. James stood to pour himself a glass of cold water, but a soft vibration on the table made him pause. His phone lit up with Diep's name. The message was short. "It's raining today. I miss you so much." He froze for a few seconds, his chest tightening. He hadn't sent her a single word all day, not a text, not a call, not even a quick check-in. Yet she said nothing but that she missed him, no blame, no reproach, as if she still trusted him completely. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he opened the chat window. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to write a long message, telling her how much he missed her too, how complicated and exhausting things were here, how he was under a kind of pressure she couldn't imagine. But a sudden knock at the door broke his thoughts. James went to open it. And of course, it was Lena. She stood there in a soft silk dress, her lightly curled hair draping over her shoulders, holding a small paper bag. "I brought you some pastries, the kind you said you liked the other day," she said, her voice as smooth as if it could melt into the air. Her eyes flicked briefly into the room, as if waiting for an invitation. James shifted his body to block the doorway, keeping a polite but firm distance. "Thank you, but I'm in the middle of something. Let's make it tomorrow." A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but she quickly replaced it with her usual smile. "Tomorrow, then," she replied, turning away. Her heels tapped softly against the wooden hallway floor, the sound fading into the quiet. Closing the door, James leaned back against it, exhaling slowly, as though he had just withstood a wave. His gaze returned to the phone, the message from Diep still waiting. In his mind, two starkly different images stood side by side: Diep, the woman waiting for him each day in Vietnam, her eyes gentle, her longing genuine, and Lena, the proud, persistent figure encircling him in this foreign land, her smile concealing motives he could not fully read. His fingers tapped out a few quick words: "I miss you too. Wait for me." He hit send. But even after the message was gone, a heavy weight clung to him. James knew that promise wasn't just a comfort, it was the last thread tying him to Diep. And if Lena's pressure and Mr. Sock's negotiations kept pulling at it, that thread could snap at any moment. From that day on, Diep told herself she had to fill every spare moment so she wouldn't sink into dark thoughts. She took on extra shifts at the store, arriving early each morning to organize new shipments, polish every wooden shelf until it gleamed, even doing the heavy work James used to help with. Every time she bent down to arrange the goods, the scent of wood and fresh paper would bring back memories of the days they cleaned together, James working while telling her stories that made her laugh. In the evenings, when the store closed, she returned home and switched to her online business. The warm yellow light of the desk lamp shone down on stacks of cardboard boxes, rolls of tape, and pre-printed invoices. The rustle of scissors and the rip of packing tape became a steady rhythm beneath the thoughts threatening to surface. She stayed up late into the night, packing each order, sealing it, and stacking it neatly in the corner. Busy hands kept her mind from circling back to questions with no answers, but they couldn't erase the emptiness in her heart. That emptiness was still there. On windy afternoons, Diep would unconsciously glance toward the gate, waiting for a familiar figure to stop, remove his helmet, and smile as he called, "I'm home." But outside was only a quiet alley, the wind moving through the trees and a few dry leaves spinning across the ground. Every evening, when she sat down for dinner, she still placed 2 sets of chopsticks and bowls out of habit, only to remember and put one away. The empty chair across from her felt painfully hollow, a reminder that he was somewhere far away, farther than she could truly imagine. In her loneliest moments, Diep would visit James's mother. She still lived in the old house on the outskirts of town, with a small garden out front bright with bougainvillea and a few orchid pots James had bought her for special occasions. At first, Diep had only meant to drop by occasionally, but it became a habit. 2 or 3 times a week, she would bring some fruit or a dish she had cooked herself. Each time she came, James's mother was delighted, eating as she told stories from his childhood, how he was a mischievous boy running all over the neighborhood, once scolded for climbing a tree to pick guavas, and how he grew up and left home to build his career. She kept old photos in a wooden box, pulling them out for Diep to see. Diep would laugh at the innocent moments captured there, even as her eyes stung with tears. On late afternoons, when the two sat on the porch drinking tea, the last golden light of the day would bathe the silver in the old woman's hair. She would hold Diep's hand and say, "He's far away for work, and often very busy, so don't worry. Just take care of yourself, so he can focus on what he's doing." Those words were like a gentle balm soothing Diep's strained heart. She would smile, nod, and promise herself to be patient a little longer. But when night came and she returned to her empty room, the ticking of the clock grew louder, and her longing for James slipped into every breath, every heartbeat, clinging to her in a way she could never shake off.
Hello mọi người, mình xin chào tất cả mọi người. Mình cảm ơn vì mọi người đã xem đến cuối video hôm nay. Và nhân đây thì mình cũng xin gửi lời chúc lời cảm ơn sâu sắc đến mọi người vì trong thời gian qua đã theo dõi và ủng hộ cho kênh của mình. Cũng như là tất cả những video mình lên thì mình đều thấy là mọi người ủng hộ cho video của mình. Tuy nhiên thì có một số nội dung mới mình mới lên trên kênh thì mình thấy là mọi người chưa có theo dõi nhiều. Do là mình lên video thì mình sẽ lên từ đầu câu chuyện của nhân vật đấy, nên mọi người nhiều khi sẽ thấy là kiểu nó hơi đi sau so với kênh chính đang phát sóng. Tuy nhiên thì dần dần mình sẽ lên đầy đủ các nội dung cũng như trình tự của câu chuyện. Mình muốn truyền tải đến một cách tốt nhất và đầy đủ nhất để mọi người xem video, cũng như là những người mà chưa từng xem nội dung đấy bao giờ cũng có thể xem và cảm nhận được rõ nội dung cũng như là tính cách và cuộc sống của nhân vật. Mình hy vọng rằng mọi người sẽ yêu quý và ủng hộ cho kênh mình nhiều hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người.